Good afternoon, I'm Sangeeta Lal. Iran has warned the United States of everlasting consequences after overnight strikes on 3 of its nuclear facilities. The country's foreign minister said Donald Trump had betrayed his supporters and Iran and announced that he was flying to Moscow to meet with Russia's President Putin. President Trump said the strikes were a spectacular military success and warned Iran that it must now make peace. Caroline Lewis reports.
Smoke rises above Natanz in Iran this morning, the aftermath of one of several American strikes, bringing the US directly into the Israel-Iran war. Donald Trump said he'd give it 2 weeks to decide whether the United States would enter the conflict. In the end, he gave it just 2 days.
There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill.
The attacks were carried out by American B-2 bombers designed to destroy targets deep underground. The move was praised by Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said the decision would change history.
President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace. And tonight, President Trump and the United States acted with a lot of strength. President Trump, I thank you. The people of Israel thank you. The forces of civilization thank you.
However, rescue teams near Tel Aviv this morning picked through rubble, the repercussions of last night's events already being felt. Iran's foreign minister said the US had betrayed Iran and its involvement would have everlasting consequences.
The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression.
In the aftermath of the US strikes, focus now shifts to what Iran will do next. America has several major military bases in the Middle East which could now be subject to attack. And Iran has said all US citizens in the region are now legitimate targets. Caroline Lewis, ITV News.
Well, we can speak now to our international editor, Emma Murphy, who is in Erbil in northern Iraq. Emma, how might Iran respond to these strikes by the US?
I think the reality is that they will respond extremely harshly. We already have been told by the Iranian authorities that all US assets and all US citizens in the region are now targets. That is a very significant statement from the Iranian regime. And then in terms of what else they could do, well, there are those bases, some here in Iraq, others elsewhere in the Gulf. They could very easily be targeted by Iranian ballistic missiles. Then there are the allies of America in the Gulf, Saudi. Maybe their oil could be targeted, Dubai, potentially its real estate. And then there is the Strait of Hormuz. We've discussed it much over the past few weeks, but it is entirely possible that Iran could try and shut that shipping lane down. Now, 1/5 of the world's oil passes through that. That would have a huge impact on the global oil price, which would affect everybody. Now, there are also the proxies that are loyal to Iran who could yet get into the game. We have the Houthis that say that they could target the shipping in the Red Sea. Also, there is Hezbollah in Lebanon. Of course, it has been significantly weakened by Israeli attacks over the past 18 months. But they do still have the power to hit Israel. And then, of course, the Shia militia here in Iraq who could target the bases. It is incredibly difficult to know quite where it's going to go, but there's no doubt Iran will offer some sort of response. But in reality, for all the bravado, for all the bombs, the battlefield damage assessments might show that there has been an impact on the Iranian nuclear capacity, but it will never fully be stopped until there are talks and peace. And somehow that seems a very long way away today.
Emma, in Iraq, thank you. Here, the Prime Minister will chair a Cobra meeting following the US strikes. I'm joined by our political correspondent, Tom Sheldrick. Tom, what have the government the UK government said about this.
Sangeeta, firstly, we're told that British forces were not involved. The United States did not support or request the use of any British facilities in the Middle East, but the Prime Minister was informed of these strikes in advance. He had been urging President Trump to exercise restraint and said earlier in the week that negotiations were better than conflict. He was asked this morning if he supports the actions that the US has now taken.
We've long had concerns about the Iranian nuclear programme and been very clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The US has now taken action to alleviate that threat. It is important that we now de-escalate the situation, stabilise the region and get the parties back around the table to negotiate.
Well, the Prime Minister has been talking to international leaders this morning, including the King of Jordan and the Sultan of Oman, and he will chair a so-called Cobra emergency meeting with senior officials this afternoon. He said there is now a risk of this conflict escalating, but he's taken all necessary measures to protect British interests in the Middle East.
Tom, thank you. Well, that's it from us this lunchtime. We'll be continuing our coverage of all the developments on our website on www.itv.com/news and on ITVX throughout the day. And the US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth is giving an update at the Pentagon right now, which you can watch on ITV News' YouTube channel. Geraint will be back at 4 o'clock. Whatever you're doing, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Goodbye.